Hi, welcome to the Divorce Allies Workshop. And my name is Melissa Gragg, and I'm actually the financial mediator. And I work with everyone to come to a financial settlement agreement and negotiate that with your spouse or attorneys. We also focus on divorce mediation. And one of the things we talked about in the Divorce Allies Circle was the experts that you have in the room and how important this is because essentially you're creating a team that could be with you for 12 to 18 months, and you're going to be working fairly closely with them. You're also going to be paying them per month to help you and assist you through this process. So obviously, you know that the Divorce Allies was created to give you other options and more affordable options that you could move through the divorce process and maybe not be spending a ton of money or run out of money through the process. So this is going to just be a quick guide to understand some of the players and how you should really be in control of the process. So no matter who you hire, if it's a lawyer, an expert, or a mediator, you have to understand that you're in control of this process. And the more you understand that you need to do your research and really vet these people before you hire them, the better off you're going to be in the long run when they are continuing to charge you and you're continuing to pay money for this kind of extended process. So let's kind of understand, how do we determine who is in the room? And the biggest thing you have to kind of figure out is, where are your weak spots? So if you are starting to research the divorce process and you haven't even filed, then you're starting to kind of figure out what's most important in your divorce. So is it the kids? Is it the house? Is it understanding where the hidden money is? Is it understanding where money has been spent on maybe a girlfriend or an outside relationship? So if you start there, then you're going to have a process of understanding what expert is most important. And so a lot of times we just default to hiring an attorney and hoping that they're going to take over the entire process. While that seems like a good idea initially, what you're going to get involved in is kind of this monthly retainer wheelhouse. And so every month you could be paying $2,000 to $5,000 to have them move this process forward. The reality is, you can go online on any state and start to download the financial disclosures or the documents and the forms that you need to fill out to get divorced. So that's going to be your first starting point. What do you even need to fill out? Now, we know that most states are going to require you to disclose an income and expense statement. That means, like, what income will you have going forward and what are your expenses going forward, as well as what is your property statement. Now, the property statement is key because that's the basis of your settlement offer. And so what property do you have? What accounts do you have? And can you list them all and put them together with your debts? And so you're going to have like this big pile of things that have value, and then you have the debt. And so the net of that is the equity or the amount that you're going to start splitting. And so if you start there and you get to this, the total value of everything that you have is like $500,000, then you're going to try to figure out how each of you can walk away somewhat even, right? So that's assuming that you don't have separate assets, or you don't have hidden money, or you don't have marital waste. Okay, so this is kind of a simple situation. So if you already know that you're going to have to fill out those forms, why don't you get started on those forms now? Why don't you start to pull down 3 to 6 months of statements for any account that you have and start to list it. We have templates in the membership community that you can utilize to get started on your budget or your property statement. Again, these could be called different things in the court system, like financial disclosures. But if those are the most important pieces of it, then you need to hire a financial expert that understands it. If there's a business valuation involved, for the most part, CDFAs, or certified divorce financial analysts, cover the basics of finance, but they don't typically have the capacity or the bandwidth to understand business valuations. So that's why we're going to encourage you to contact somebody that has the capability to understand the business, the nuances of income flowing in and out of those businesses. And then potentially, if you have real estate investments, you also might need to contact a real estate appraiser. So what if you are already overwhelmed with this whole process, even in the first 5 minutes of this video? Well, then you have to start to understand that you might need to work on mindset first. And so mindset is going to be either involving a divorce coach or some sort of specialist that really has that capability of understanding the divorce process. So when we talk about it in the circle, what we talked about was that in this process of divorce, you're kind of in a finite, you're going to file and you're going to finish. And it's going to be in this time frame. Hopefully it could be 6 months, but for the reality, realistically, conservatively, you should look at 12 to 18 months is going to be this process, especially if you have some complications like a business valuation or hidden assets or separate assets. So in kind of looking at some of those, how do you start to hire somebody that's in that space and that just understands divorce? So most of the other experts that you already have, like you have a CPA or financial planner or even a therapist, those are going to be people that could be there before you got divorced and they could be there after you got divorced. But in those divorce bookends, what you're really looking for are experts that have divorce knowledge. That's why you're hiring a family law attorney or a pro se advocate. That's why you're looking at maybe a limited scope attorney that understands the nuances of either if it's custody and child support, if you have domestic violence issues, or if it's mostly money. You're kind of hiring people that have that knowledge base in the divorce arena on those couple areas. So now if we're looking at parenting or parenting plans, parenting plan actually takes a significant amount of time. And so what we talk about is that in this process of divorce, if you're going and filing for divorce and you have this 12 to 18 month waiting period, it's sort of like you're in the waiting room, waiting to talk to the judge, waiting to go through the process of depositions or discovery and subpoenas and all of those things. But the reality is, while you're waiting, could you be pushing some of these things forward? Could you be working with a coach and getting your mind right and your mindset and not being triggered by a lot of their actions? Can you start to disengage with communication? So you're going to like Our Family Wizard or some other communication app where it's all disclosable to the court. And that would be if you have some sort of abuse issues. But also, the parenting plan is going to take several meetings with a parenting specialist, because if that is your primary concern and if you have young children, you may want to have a very robust parenting plan. Of course, you can download them online, and we have several versions available to our community. But the reality is, working with somebody, they're going to kind of jog your memory and make you think ahead for the future and what you're going to be dealing with. Now, if everything comes down to the house and you're only working, maybe you don't have a lot of retirement, maybe you just have equity in the house, then you're going to have to look at whether you can keep it, whether your spouse can keep it, or whether it needs to be sold. So if anything in this process needs to be sold, sometimes it doesn't need to be valued, but you might not know if it's going to be sold until the end. So that's why you might need to get a real estate appraiser or a CMA for the real estate. And then do you have commercial real estate or residential real estate? Like, do you have a house or do you have a corporate building? And those two might have different real estate appraisers. You also might need to find somebody in your area. So about the house though, like, can you afford it? Can you take over the mortgage? Do you have some questions about that? So the other thing that we're going to typically get an expert involved, and this could be a CDFA, is if you have to figure out maintenance, alimony, child support, or any support payments. And again, these are different terms that are used state by state, and you have to look at what is the calculator in your state. So how is it being calculated to get alimony or child support? And typically it's going to start with an analysis of the income. And so that's going to be looking at prior tax returns, maybe looking at bank statements, but you want to be realistic about what income is going to be going forward. So it's not just W-2 wages. It could be income from investments. It could be income from rental properties. Typically, a lot of that income is also reported on your tax return. So that's a good first place to start. But now, who do you need at the table? And at the beginning, you might be confused at who you need or how you're going to pay for these things. But you have to consider you might need a lawyer, you might need a financial expert or a parenting plan specialist. You might need a mortgage planner to figure out the house. A coach or a therapist is going to be some of the next people that you would consider. So in the sequence of hiring, a lot of times people are going to hire that attorney first. I would recommend that you ask the attorney, do they work with a financial expert? Do the attorney or the financial expert have any experience in mediation? And are they trained as mediators? Right now, it only takes about 40 hours to be trained as a mediator, and there's really no ongoing learning. So it's really, do they have experience? Do they have that training? And if they haven't done those two things, how are they going to get you to a settlement? The reality is the settlement is kind of the escape door or the way out of that waiting room that you're sitting in and you don't have any control over the process. And so if you have a financial expert that can provide you with a settlement offer and you have an attorney that is willing to champion that offer over and start to negotiate it, that's going to be great. If not, you might want to look towards a mediation specialist or a mediation consultant to help you negotiate, to help you develop that settlement offer and the language that it's going to take to get it settled. So when are there going to be specialists involved? Well, a guardian ad litem or a GAL is going to be involved if there are issues with the kids. So they're a lawyer for the children. So this could be domestic violence or anywhere where there's a kind of a fight over custody and we're not really concerned. It could be that both parents are saying the other one's toxic. Either way, there could be a specialist that comes in and that could cost $3,000 to $6,000 to get them started. Your attorney could cost $5,000 to $10,000 retainer to get them started. And what are they going to do first? They're going to do your financial disclosures. So if you come into that meeting with your budget and your property statement already, it's going to give the attorney a very good picture of how you operate, how you are prepared, and how you want to get to settlement very quickly. So what is a vocational rehabilitation specialist or Voc Rehab specialist? Well, that's going to be a person that determines whether you can work and at what capacity you could work. So they're going to look at what is your history, what is your training. Maybe you've been a stay-at-home mom for 20 years. They may say you could at least go and work a minimum wage job for 30 hours a week, right? So that's at least going to be the basis that they're going to ascribe income to you in that calculation of alimony and child support. They could say that you could make $25,000 to $30,000. Now, if you have specialized training or you have advanced degrees, they could say you could make more, and that's going to be used in the court. Now, that doesn't mean that's income that you're currently making. It means that it's hypothetically what you could make in the future. A lot of times, maintenance and alimony is supposed to be rehabilitative, which means it's supposed to just last long enough to get you off your feet and into a position where you can make your own money for your expenses. You might need a business valuation expert or a business valuator to look at the business. A lot of times we will run calculations that could be a preliminary valuation or just running numbers and a range of value for the settlement offer. That means you're not getting a full report, you're not getting any deliverables, and you're not getting all the expenses that are included. A business valuation could cost anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000, with larger firms charging $25,000 as a retainer. A Voc Rehabilitation Specialist is usually going to cost maybe $1,500 to $3,000. So now you have a real estate appraiser, and depending upon the type of real estate, a house, you might be able to get a real estate appraiser to do it for like $500 to $1,500. For a commercial property, it could cost $1,000 to $3,000. For farmland and other things, or equipment, you might have specific appraisers for those things. Avoid looking at people or hiring them just because they are your friend and they recommended somebody, or they use them in their divorce. And you don't also have to work with the person that the attorney has provided as well. Financial experts can be hired from around the country, whereas your attorney is going to be hired in the state that you work in. And some of these other professionals, like the realtor or the real estate professional, may also need to be hired in your state. So what can you do to contain the costs? Well, to contain the costs, you kind of need to hire people at the beginning and interview them or do their free consult and then determine what the strategy is. So again, if you came to them and you've already worked with somebody like us and you have your budget and your preliminary values and your property statement and you're going and meeting that attorney for the first time, they're going to think you're hyper prepared and that you're ready to go through this process in an economical, efficient manner. If you're leaving everything to the attorney and they need to figure out all of this process, that could cost you $10,000 just to get those initial financial disclosures. And then they still need to be reviewed by a financial expert. So again, you don't need to micromanage the expert's hours. Try to look at fixed fees or flat fee process or work in stages. So like here, I need this first part of it. How much is it going to cost for us to get to that part? Okay, what do I need to pay when we move beyond that? And then how am I going to get those deliverables or reports? And do I need them right now, or do I need them only when the mediation or negotiations break down? So those are going to be some areas where you can start to hire the right people, understand where they come into play. We also recommend that you start meeting with these people maybe every 2 weeks or 3 weeks or once a month. Get everybody in the room. Everybody has to have a summary of what they've done and what needs to be done. And you can kind of keep that in play. Yes, that's an expensive meeting, but when everybody's talking about where they are, you don't know what the experts need to know. And sometimes the legal strategy and the financial strategy, those need to come together as a cohesive plan. So you have to realize that the court is not your savior. So just because you're waiting or you think that somebody has done bad behavior, the court's not going to necessarily fix it, and they may not be able to protect you. So they're going to have status conferences, but that's typically going to be like 15 minutes, and you're just updating the court. What is the court asking? Are you settled? Have you, provided documents to each other? Have you provided information in support of the finances? Is there anything that you don't have? And so they're just checking in maybe each month, maybe every couple months, to understand how you've moved forward and if you need a trial date yet. So again, that's why this could be 3, 6, 12 months before you actually get a trial date. And what's going to happen is you really want to use the court system to get the discovery or get the documents. And if you can't get the documents directly from your spouse, then you would issue subpoenas in order to get them directly from the banks. That's where you want to get the credit card statements or bank statements. And what we use those for is to compare them to the tax return and try to determine if there are any marital waste or funds that are missing. Regardless of whether you do mediation, arbitration, collaborative law, or litigation, you're going to be using the court system to finish this process. So you can do everything outside of court and then bring it back to the judge and say, we've solved it all. Here you go, where you go ahead and submit it to the court. And then you would go and use that trial date to actually testify that you've agreed to some process and everybody has come to finalize this. So these areas of mediation are just going to be options, or collaborative law are going to be alternative dispute resolution options, which means you're going to kind of exit the court process and you're going to go into mediation. And then once you've solved or settled your case, you're going to go back into the court and explain to them what you've done. So these are going to be some of the ways that you can have people involved in your process and understand their roles and how can you get your team to move forward without breaking the bank. If you don't do some of these things, unfortunately, you might get to a point where you've spent $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on experts and you're not any further along than you were at the beginning. So that's why focusing on a settlement offer and providing it to your spouse and starting to get through something like mediation or some alternative way. Just email them the offer. I mean, it doesn't have to be that complicated. So stay tuned for more information about specifically how you could utilize a business valuation expert. But for right now, we'll cover all of the people and get you a good guide of how to move forward. So I will talk to you soon.